In our Machzor on page 254, that the reading of Torah be like prayer, a meditation to remind us what we strive for, a chant that binds us to the chain of generations. Let the reading of Torah be like prayer, a moment of purest solidarity with our people's hopes and history, an invitation to affirm or dissent, to challenge or believe, to ask why, or say Amen. Let the reading of Torah be like prayer, flowing like waters that renew the spirit, refreshing and sweet to nourish the soul. Let the reading of Torah be like prayer, the word of blessing, to reverse the conversation with God. Good afternoon and welcome to our Yom Kippur Torah service for this day, for our morning service. Again, I remind you that unlike years past, and given the platform online that we are using, we are going to condense the service a little bit by combining all of the aliyot and all of the different voices of our Ba'alei Koreh, our Torah chanters, into one passage, and we will have the opportunity to share Misha Berach, a blessing for our honorees at the conclusion. So we will continue now in our Machzorim, our High Holy Day prayer book, on page 255. Page 255, with the chanting of Ein Kamocha.
Ein Kamocha ba'Elohim Adonai, Ein k'ma'asecha, Malchutecha malechut kol olamim, u'memshaltecha bechol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imach le'olam v'ad. Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai yivarech et amo b'shalom.
Gemar Chatima Tova, may we all be inscribed for a good year. We read this morning, Atem nitzavim hayom kolchem lifnei Adonai Elohecha. You stand this day, all of you, before Adonai your God. There's an obvious irony to the text that we are reading this morning, a spiritual crescendo to Moses' address to the people who stood before him, poised to cross over the river Jordan to enter into the land which God had promised them. Moses reminds the people of the covenantal commitment that they have made to their God and their need to adhere to the mitzvot as they begin this new chapter in our people's history. Of course, we are not able to stand physically together on this day with our synagogue building closed and the need to maintain physical distancing. But the Torah actually accounts for that, going on in an incredibly egalitarian and inclusive fashion when it says, Lo itchem levadchem anochi koret et habrit hazot. I make this covenant with its sanctions, not with you alone, but both with those who are standing here with us this day before the eternal our God, and those who are not here with us this day. Rashi and the other commentators all point out that those who are not with us here this day refers not only to those who were absent from the assembly on that day, but also all the generations that will come in the future. So any way you look at it, from the Torah's point of view, we do assemble together today, not only with one another from the safe and physically distant bubbles of our own homes, but on this Yom Kippur day, from our own home sanctuaries, we stand together with all the people of Israel who ever lived, standing together before our God. For that miraculous assembly that transcends both space and time, we express our awe and our gratitude. Gratitude is an important spiritual practice. It helps us to see past the burdens in our lives and focus on the good, all the blessings that are afforded to us, even when life can be challenging and difficult. It allows us to acknowledge all that contributes to our well-being, the obvious and the less obvious, that which exists within our life's bubble, and even that or those who may be well outside our daily frame of reference. Gratitude is an act of mindfulness that can open up our world. This is referenced as part of the traditional Yom Kippur afternoon service, which contains a section called the Avodah. This unique service uses a collection of texts to present a history of Jewish worship from creation up through the Second Temple period. Included in this service is a story about how the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, conducted the ritual in the temple on the Day of Atonement. The story reaches its climax when it describes when the Kohen Gadol entered the Holy of Holies and what he did there. It tells how the Kohen Gadol put on white garments, worn only on Yom Kippur, and how he walked from his home to the temple. Apparently, thousands of people lined the streets of Jerusalem to cheer on the high priest and to see the splendor of his pure white garments. And then we are told that when he arrived at the Beit HaMikdash, the holy temple, he entered into the Holy of Holies, the most sacred inner sanctum of the temple, a place so holy that no one ever entered there except one person, the Kohen Gadol, on one day, Yom Kippur. The Kohen Gadol only remained in the Holy of Holies for a very short time. There he burnt incense and offered the final offering of the day. Concluding with a short prayer on behalf of the people of Israel, he exited the Holy of Holies and made his way back home, again accompanied by an enormous crowd of people congratulating him for having entered in peace and having departed in peace. The Talmud tells us that anyone who was privileged to be there and to witness this spectacle never in their lives forgot it. Now I want to share a second story that comes from the same period, a little known passage from the Talmud, which I learned from Rabbi Jack Reamer, that challenges some of the assumptions from the previous story, especially the part about no one but the high priest entering into the Holy of Holies. The Talmud tells us that there was a trap door in the roof of the temple, which was located just above the Holy of Holies. Once every 7 years, they would open the trap door and lower some workers down by a rope so that they could clean up and make any repairs necessary. When these caretakers had finished their labors, they would give a tug on the rope and they would be pulled up again. And when they were done, these workmen would pack up their tools and head back home. But unlike the high priest, no one made a fuss over them as they made their way. Nobody knew who they were or what they had done. Nobody paid any attention to them. Nobody even knew their names. The Talmud actually gives us one more detail about these workers. The Holy of Holies is a dangerous place filled with concentrated holiness. To help protect them, the Talmud tells us, before they were let down by that rope into the Holy of Holies, these important recruits were provided with face masks. They were given face masks because if they inhaled from the smoke or the incense of the holy space, they would die. 2,500 years ago, those custodians of the sacred space wore masks so they would not die. These unknown, uncelebrated Jewish workers wore masks so that the Holy of Holies could be maintained and the ritual life of the community could continue no matter what was going on. The high priest cheered and applauded for his moments of ritual activity in the inner sanctum. He could not do his job unless the efforts of these unacknowledged caretakers who did their work in the very same space. These holy custodians with their masks made me think of all the masked workers that we encounter every day, whose efforts to keep us safe and healthy probably go as unacknowledged as the ones who descended through that trapdoor into the Holy of Holies. We tend to extend our thanks, although probably not enough, to all of the frontline healthcare workers who every day put themselves at risk to care for the sick and the vulnerable. They deserve it because we know that one cough, one breath, one close contact between them and their patients could cost them their lives. But think of all the nameless and numberless others that we encounter every day who devote themselves to serving the community in ways that also safeguard our health and well-being without barely getting a nod, if not a thank you. Think of all the custodians and caretakers and janitors who are now charged with cleansing and sanitizing every surface we touch in schools, hospitals, office buildings, shops, and all kinds of public spaces, including our own Joe Paval here at the temple, scrubbing floors, wiping down countertops and door handles, disinfecting washrooms and classrooms, refilling sanitizer dispensers, posting up signs on the walls and taping arrows to the floor, all just to help take care of us. Think of the checkout clerks and those who stock the shelves at your local grocery store, the hospitality workers in the kitchens, out on the patios and inside the dining rooms, retail staff in stores, drivers on buses, the teachers and educators desperately devoting their commitment and their resourcefulness to creating some semblance of a familiar and engaging experience for their young students. Think of the housekeepers and the personal support workers, the sanitation workers, the truck drivers, the food delivery drivers. I could go on and on and on, and I am sorry if I left anyone out. My point is, with masks on our faces and sincerity in our hearts, we should be lining the streets and cheering when these masked heroes make their way home after a long day, because the work they do allows us to do the work we do in a safe and healthy way. They deserve to be recognized and honored for their efforts, just as the Kohen Gadol in the Holy of Holies, for the essential and sacred work that they do every day, gloves on their fingers and masks on their faces, so that they and we will not die. It is our custom in this synagogue to say thank you and pay honor on this morning to those who have sustained the sacred temple through their generosity. And we will do that. But today, I also want to pay tribute and honor to all of those nameless masked faces who, during this time of pandemic, have taken the extra steps necessary to help maintain the health and well-being of us all. Mishaberach Avotenu Avraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, may the Holy One of Blessing, who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, during this period of pandemic, bring blessing to all those who labor on our behalf to maintain the health and well-being of all the members of our community. Frontline healthcare workers, clerks, custodians, teachers, and all others, including the many members of our own congregation who, adorned in the clay kodesh of personal protective equipment, navigate the unfolding dangers of the world each day to tend to those that they are engaged to help. Bless them in their coming home and their going out, and let them know our appreciation and gratitude for their efforts. Ease their fear and sustain them. Source of all breath, healer of all being, protect them. Strengthen the work of their hands and keep them in health. Bring us speedily to a time when we can gaze upon their unencumbered faces again, and let them again know a time when they can breathe without fear. Bless them all with an abundance of health, of happiness, of prosperity, and peace. And we say together, Amen. Gemar Chatima Tova. We continue now with the reading of the Torah for this Yom Kippur morning from Sefer Devarim, from the book of Deuteronomy, chapters 29 and 30, which can be found in your Machzor, your High Holy Day prayer book, on page 266, page 266. And we now call to the blessing of the Torah. Na la'amod levarech et Torah. Tom and Sasha Wise, Dr. Janet and Gerald Asa, David and Dana Horwood, the Schreiber family, Dr. Michael Taylor and family, Dr. Bill and Dana Thorogood, Marvin and Lorraine Cohen, Dr. Bob and Arlie Singer, Dr. Bonnie and David Lowith, and Doctors Ron and Faith Kaplan, our friends and benefactors, to bless the Torah.
Baruch et Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen.
Atem nitzavim hayom kulchem lifnei Adonai Elohechem Rashechem Shivtechem Ziknechem Veshotrechem Kol Ish Yisrael Tapchem Neshechem Vegercha Asher Bekerev Mechanecha Mechotev Eitzecha Ad Shoev Meimecha Leavrecha Bivrit Adonai Elohecha Uvalato Asher Adonai Elohecha Korei Timcha Hayom
למען הקים אותך היום לא לעם והוא יהיה לך לאלוהים כאשר דיבר לך וכאשר נשבע לאבותיך לאברהם ליצחק וליעקב ולא אתכם לבדכם אנוכי כורת את הברית הזאת ואת העלה הזאת כי את אשר ישנו פה עמנו עומד היום לפני אדוני אלוהינו ואת אשר איננו פה עמנו היום.
וחיה כי יבואו עליך כל הדברים האלה הברכה והקללה אשר נתתי לפניך והשבותה אל לבביך בכל הגויים אשר הדיחך אדוני אלוהיך שמה ושבת עד אדוני אלוהיך ושמעת בקולו ככל אשר אנוכי מצווך היום אתה ובניך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ושב אדוני אלוהיך את שבותך וריחמך ושב וקיבצך מכל העמים אשר הפיצך אדוני אלוהיך שמה אם יהיה נדחך בקצה השמיים משם יקבצך אדוני אלוהיך ומשם ייקחך והביאך אדוני אלוהיך אל הארץ אשר ירשו אבותיך וירשת והיטיבך והרבך מאבותיך.
ומל אדוני אלוהיך את לבביך ואת לבב זרעך לאהבה את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך, למען חייך. ונתן אדוני אלוהיך את כל העלות האלה על אויביך ועל שונאיך אשר רדפוך. ואתה תשוב ושמעת בקול אדוני, ועשית את כל מצוותיו אשר אנוכי מצווך היום. והותירך אדוני אלוהיך בכל מעשה ידיך, בפרי בטנך ובפרי בהמתך ובפרי אדמתך לטובה, כי ישוב אדוני לשוש עליך לטוב, כאשר שש על אבותיך. כי תשמע בקול אדוני אלוהיך לשמור מצוותיו וחוקותיו הכתובה בספר התורה הזה, כי תשוב אל אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך.
כי המצווה הזאת אשר אנוכי מצווך היום לא נפלט היא ממך ולא רחוקה היא. לא בשמיים היא לאמור, מי יעלה לנו השמיימה ויקחיה לנו וישמיענו אותה ונעשנה. ולא מעבר לים היא לאמור, מי יעבור לנו אל עבר הים ויקחיה לנו וישמיענו אותה ונעשנה. כי קרוב אליך הדבר מאוד, בפיך ובלבבך לעשותו.
ראה נתתי לפניך היום את החיים ואת הטוב ואת המוות ואת הרע, אשר אנוכי מצווך היום לאהבה את אדוני אלוהיך, ללכת בדרכיו ולשמור מצוותיו וחוקותיו ומשפטיו, וחיית ורבית וברכך אדוני אלוהיך בארץ אשר אתה ושמה לרשתה. ואם יפנה לבבך ולא תשמע ונידחת והשתחווית לאלוהים אחרים ועבדתם, הגדתי לכם היום כי אבות תאבדון. לא תאריכון ימים על האדמה אשר אתה עובר את הירדן לבוא שמה לרשתה. העידותי בכם היום את השמיים ואת הארץ החיים והמוות נתתי לפניך, הברכה והקללה, ובחרת בחיים למען תהיה אתה וזרעך, לאהבה את אדוני אלוהיך, לשמוע בקולו ולדוב קבו, כי הוא חייך ואורך ימיך. השבת על האדמה אשר נשבע אדוני לאבותיך, לאברהם, ליצחק וליעקב, לתת להם.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam natan b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Mishaberach avotenu Avraham Yitzhak v'Yaakov v'imotenu Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah, hu yivarech kol nidivim shalanu ba'avor sha'alu lichvod hamakom, lichvod haTorah, v'lichvod Yom HaKippurim. May the Holy One of Blessing, who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bring blessings to Tom and Sasha Wise, Dr. Janet and Gerald Asa, David and Dana Horwood, the Schreiber family, Dr. Michael Taylor and family, Dr. Bill and Dana Thorogood, Marvin and Lorraine Cohen, Dr. Bob and Arlie Singer, Dr. Bonnie and David Lowith, and Doctors Ron and Faith Kaplan, who have been called to the Torah on this Yom Kippur morning, in honor of the Holy One, in honor of Torah, and in honor of this Day of Atonement. Holy One of Blessing, bestow your blessings on these friends and benefactors whose kindness and benevolence have helped us to sustain this sacred congregation. We celebrate this legacy of those who, moved by generosity and free will, volunteer their time and resources to build and maintain the cherished community which brings so much meaning into our lives. As we are taught in the book of Psalms, we honor you as Nidivei Amo, those who are leaders among our people. Our God, we are deeply thankful for the dedication and generosity of spirit that brings these men and women before you, prepared to devote themselves in service to you and the Jewish people. Strengthen the work of their hands and grant them every success in their endeavors as they lead us in the pursuit of our sacred mission. Bless them and all of their dear ones with safety and protection in time of trouble, and grant them an abundance of health, of happiness, prosperity, and peace. And we say together, Amen.